Hey, in honor of the Hilula of SHayala of Keresteer today, Shai ben Moshe, we have the honor of hosting Shmuel, our dear Chaver, Shmuel Rosenberg. He will share with us some miracles that he experienced with the SHayala.
So it was in the late 90s, and I was at my Rebbe's, the Tusher Rebbe, in Beausejour, Canada. And the Gabbai, who I was friends with and still am, said the Rebbe just did a big ness, a big miracle with the Rebbe Shai of Keresteer. I said, who is that? And he said, you never heard of Rebbe Shai of Keresteer? I said, no. He said, Rebbe Shai was a big miracle worker, and the Rebbe took a picture of Rebbe Shai, and he gave it to a construction owner who was getting visited by 3 IRS agents every single day, poring over all of his records. And he was afraid that they were going to find something because he had multiple construction projects. He was honest, but he figured 3 guys looking over everything for 12 hours a day, they're bound to find some problem. So he went to the Tusher Rebbe and he told him what's going on. The Tusher Rebbe said, take this picture of Rebbe Shai when these 3 IRS agents come in, put it right on the table in front of them. So that's what he did. And the 3 IRS agents looked at this picture and they turned it upside down. He turned it up, they turned it upside down, he turned it up, upside down, he turned it up. That's my Rebbe, he's my rabbi, he's staying right there. And the 3 IRS agents said, we'll be right back. And they went out the door and you could see in the window, the 3 of them were talking to one another. And they looked like they were going back and forth, this conversation, that conversation. They left, they never came back. That was the end of it. So, the Gabbai, this is what I heard, and the Gabbai said, here, Sam, I'll give you a copy of the picture that the Rebbe used. And he gave me a copy of the picture. So I took this picture, and I went home, I didn't think about it. 6 months later, I got a notice from the IRS. And the IRS says, you're being audited. And you're being audited for 2 things. 1, your charitable deductions, and 2, for taking deductions on your 2 family which you owned and lived in. Now, at this time that I did my taxes, I was in Israel, and I was doing it by fax. This was before computers. And I sent back and forth the information, and I got it all messed up. I shouldn't have taken these various deductions that I did, and I shouldn't have taken the tenant's deductions as my own. But it got done by fax. It wasn't done intentionally wrong. And I figured, I'll just go to the hearing, and I'll bring a copy of a check, and I'll bring a check, and whatever they tell me to pay, I'll pay, and that'll be the end of it. And I started to go in my van. I'm going to go to this meeting. I said, wait a minute, what about that picture of Rebbe Shai? And I said, I think I'll bring that. Went back in my place, got that nice picture that I got from the Tusher Rebbe's Gabbai, took that picture with me, and when I got to the IRS agent's office, it was a lady, and it was a big table, maybe 10, 12 feet long, nothing on it whatsoever. So I take my picture of Rebbe Shai and I put it right in the middle of the table. And I thought for sure she's going to say something, put it upside down, or say something. She doesn't say a thing. And she starts the audit. And she starts looking over my deductions. And she looks at my charitable deduction. She goes, number 1, this looks okay. Number 2, this looks okay. Number 3, this looks okay. I'm thinking to myself, lady, it's all wrong. I have a check in my pocket ready to pay it because it's not accurate. This looks good, she says, this looks good. She gets to the end, says, I'm going to recommend they leave your charitable deductions alone. It looks fine. And furthermore, you seem to have a lot of charitable deductions. In the future, if anybody bothers you, you should say such and such words. I forgot what the word she told me. It's a long time ago. So then she goes to my house deductions. that I took off my tenant's expenses as my own, which I'm not supposed to do. She says, this one looks good, this looks good, this looks good, and I'm thinking, lady, not only good, it's all wrong. I'm here ready to pay you. Of course, I don't say that. I'm talking to myself, thinking that. And she goes all the way through my charitable deductions. And at the end of my charitable deductions, she said, I'm going to recommend this stays the same. They listen to me 99.5% of the time. You can go. That's my first experience with Reb Yishai. So I'm very happy with what's going on. I'm a little flabbergasted. I mean, I can't even believe this took place, actually, that this went this way. But it went. That's what happened. So I'm now living in Muncie, New York. And in Muncie, New York, I'm representing a lot of ultra-frum people who get injured because I'm a lawyer. You have to understand that I'm a lawyer to understand the kinds of cases that I'm involved in, which are almost always personal injury cases. And the next situation, I'm a lawyer for a Satmar Chassid. And it was a typical case for that I might have. He had been in an accident and he ruptured a muscle and he had hurt his arm from that. And he was hurt, no question, but it wasn't going to be life-changing for him, but he definitely had an injury. So we go to their lawyer's office, and their lawyer, his name was Rich Scalarin, and to me he looked like an Italian Catholic, looked like a nice guy. I'd never met him in person. He introduces himself. He says, my name's Rich Scalarin. And I had this Satmar Chassid who looked exactly like a real Hasidic Satmar Chassid, and he looks at my client and he says, I'm a Jew also. Yeah, my wife's a member of the Reform Sisterhood. And I said, he looks at me, I said, that's nice, Rich. And then he proceeds to grill my client for an hour. And he asked my client every question you can ask. But I had him pretty well prepared, and he answered pretty good. And at the end of that hour, Rich looks at me. And by the way, did I mention that I put a picture of Reb Yishai right in the center of his table? Well, I should mention that because that's a very important part. As soon as I got in there, I took that same picture of Reb Yishai and I put it right in the center of the table. And I fully expected Rich to say something. But again, Rich did not say a word about the picture. And he just left it there. But when the hearing finished, and after he examined my client, he looks at me and he says, Sam, how much money do you want on this case? Now, I'm thinking to myself, what kind of question is that? How much money? I want a fortune. You don't ask how much money I want. You ask how much will it take? How much is the case worth? It's not a question that's normally asked. So my mind is racing very quickly. I figured I have to come up with some answer. And so I come up with a crazy cockamamie number that's like way over what the case is worth. And I figured I'll tell him. So I tell him this crazy number is not even a normal number. I forget exactly what it was, over 20 years ago. It was some odd number. And a good 50% more, or more than that, of anywhere what it was worth. And Rich looks at me and he says, Sam, if I were to get you that amount of money, I'd get in trouble with my client, the insurance company. I said, Rich, I don't want you to do anything wrong. I didn't ask you to do anything wrong. You asked me. What do I want? I'm telling you, this is what I want. So he says, I'll get back to you in 2 days. And we leave. Now, in my business, when a lawyer says that to me, maybe he'll get back to me, maybe he won't. Likely he won't. Maybe he'll get back to me in 30 days, or maybe I'll never hear from him on the whole thing. 2 days later, Rich calls me up, and he says, Sam, I have your number for you. And I'm sitting in my chair, ready to jump out of my chair. I'm so excited, I can't, come on, are you kidding me? That's what he says. I managed to stay calm while he's talking to me, and as soon as he hung up, I jumped out of my chair, and I was like, whoa! And I said, wait a minute, Reb Yeshai is on this job. It's got nothing to do with me. This is what's going on. It's Reb Yeshai. Sure enough, he sends a check for that amount. My client can't believe it, and he's thrilled. And that's my first case, legal case with Reb Yeshai. That's the first experience.
What made you take the picture?
Now, I'm not making up one thing about this. Why did I take the picture? Because that's what the Tusher Rebbe did. That's what happened, and with the Tusher Rebbe, what he told, and I just followed suit. Nobody told me to do it. This is what I did. So, okay. So now I figure, Reb Yeshai is, whoa, something. So the shul I was going to, the rabbi was a distant descendant of Reb Yeshai. And I told him about this. And he said to me, I want a copy of that picture. I said, okay. So I give him a copy of the picture. At that time, in Keresteer, Hungary, I went there. There were 10 or 12 people at his kever on the Yortzeit. And today, there's tens of thousands of people. And I still have that picture, and I've given it out to many people, and if anybody wants it, they can come and pick a copy of it up. I'll be happy to share it with them. And I've used it many, many times, and it's worked, thank God, virtually in all the situations I've been involved in, and many other situations. So, and I think that's what really started to a lot of people starting to go to Keresteer. So, the next situation I had was a very complicated situation, which I'll try to make simple. Again, my typical situation. A person is very badly injured. In this case, he was on a construction site in the Bronx, and he was on a platform, and the platform collapsed. He fell, he hit various things, he broke many, many things from a high distance up. Different things broke his fall. He didn't die, but he had multiple injuries. So, sounds like a great case, and it really was a great case, except my client was a problem. And the problem was he didn't listen to his lawyer. And one of the main things is you have to cooperate. If he's going to do something, he has to tell me. I told him, when you get better, and eventually people's breaks and bruises get better, do not go back to work. Because if you go back to work without telling me, and you're collecting what's called workers' compensation, which is when you're out of work, they'll consider this as a fraud. If you're going to put in a claim in saying you can't work and you actually are working. So I thought that I communicated quite well with him, and he understood it, and I think he did understand it. But what happened in that case is, unbeknownst to me, because he didn't tell me, he went back to work, and the other side charged him with fraud in his workers' compensation case, which was an accompanying case. I did not represent him on that. That means that the other lawyer, if they brought this case in, they could parade it in front of a jury that this guy is a liar, he's a crook, he's defrauding people out of money, blah, 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 blah. He could do a lot to really destroy this guy in front of a jury. So I was very nervous about this. And this case went to a settlement conference in the Bronx in front of the judge. And before that, I met the adjuster, and there were two insurance companies here. One was for a first level, one was for a second level. I'll try not to get too complicated here. And I had seen the lawyer before, and the lawyer was a SOB. And this lawyer not only was an SOB, but this lawyer was one of the best lawyers you can imagine. This guy was a tiger. He was ready to eat you alive. He had 75 lawyers working for him, and he literally destroyed people's cases. And I met him at a trial conference, and I heard him talk. And he talked and bragged about how he destroyed these various people's cases. And the guy had a Jewish name, and I think he was Jewish. And I heard this conference before my case, and I went up to this guy, and I said, look, you're proud of what you're doing. You're like ruining people's lives, and you're bragging about it. Like these people will never work again, and you're destroying them, and they're getting nothing because you're Mr. Shark lawyer. And I said, that's disgusting what you're doing. This is what I tell the guy. Now, this was before he's on my case. When I meet him on this case, he's on the case, the most disgusting guy around, Mr. Shark Tiger, and I have to be on the other side of him. And so I figured, maybe I'll have a problem here. I've already offended this guy, but I took that case, the whole case. It was thick, and there was other parts to it. I put it right on Rebbe Shai's counter. And I'm telling you, this guy, when I met him, he could not have been nicer to me. He was pleasant. Anything I asked him to do, he did. He was cooperative. I told some other lawyer friends about this. He said, you can't be. You're talking about it the wrong guy. This guy's disgusting. He's terrible. He won't help. He wouldn't help his mother walk down the street. He is vicious. I said, no, he was so nice. And anything I asked, any request I ever had, he just went right along with it. And that's the way this guy was acting. So this case moved along, and there were 2 insurance companies on this case. And at this conference that we had to settle the case, which is required by the courts, it came out that my guy was lying, and that at that point I didn't know that. And it came out as a surprise. And the judge said, we don't like liars down here and cheaters down here. And I'm thinking, what are they talking about? And it turns out they're talking about my client. And then the main adjuster on the case, which is from a very, very big insurance company, I'll think of it, the biggest actually in America. And this guy looks at me with his lawyer. I put my hand out to say hello, which is common. He said, I won't shake hands with you. He says, I'm never going to pay you a penny. Ever. Not 1 penny. And then he walks away. Wow, this is thinking to myself, well, this is great. I didn't know my client had made all these lies at that time, but I found out. And my client ended up, as a result of what he did, it cost me an extra year on this case and a lot of money. In my business, you have to spend the expenses for your client, and I had put up at that point, I think $80,000, which for me was a lot of dough to put up for him. And I hadn't been paid a penny now. It's almost 2 years later. And so there was a lot of pressure on me. Plus, my client had to go out of workers' compensation. He had no money, and he was coming to me all the time for money. I'm not allowed to give him money. I had to arrange loans for him just to keep him in money, or he wouldn't be able to survive. So that was the situation. So I'm figuring out what am I going to do in this situation. And I have a great legal researcher. Her name was Susan. Graduated Columbia Law School, and she was really sharp. She's retired recently. And I talked it over with her, and I knew the case extremely well, obviously, and I decided that I was going to file something called a motion for summary judgment. Don't worry, I'll explain it. It's not complicated. The words sound complicated, but you'll understand it. A motion for summary judgment is something that you file when there's no need for a trial. It means a summary judgment. We don't need a trial. Why don't we need a trial? Because we can prove to you, Mr. Judge or Mrs. Judge, that we have all the facts. They're right here. So there's nothing to have a trial over. The only thing you need a trial for is to figure out what it's worth. So we don't need to bring in our parade of witnesses and what it should be and what it shouldn't be. So I go ahead and I file this massive motion for summary judgment, which was about like this thick, with all kinds of affidavits and all kinds of information. Basically, I'm trying my case on paper, sending it to the judge. And so what do I do with that motion for summary judgment? I take that motion this thick and I have it placed on Reb Yeshai's kever. Who else? Who could be better? So I have that big motion placed right on Reb Yeshai's kever. Now, it takes 30 days for the other side to answer. They have up to 30 days. And it's now 29 days go by and I haven't heard from the other side. I filed my motion, they didn't file their papers. So I'm wondering if they're gonna try to play some games in the last second. So I figured, you know what, I'll just call the lawyer. So I called the other side and I said, look, it's 29 days later, you have 1 day to file your answer. You know, what's going on? The lawyer says to me, we're not filing any answer. So I say, thank you, and I don't say anything because I'm stunned. And then I hang up, and I start talking to myself. And I'm saying, what do you mean you didn't file an answer? You gotta file an answer. This case is worth millions of bucks. On a $10,000 case, an insurance company files an answer. They don't just not file an answer and just give in. They never do that. And I'm going spinning in my head, thinking, how could this be? So I call my researcher, Susan. I say, Susan, you know the case we just filed, the motion, etc.? There's no answer. And they're not filing one. She said, come on, Sam, it can't be. She said, they always file answers. I've been doing this for 40 years, 30 years. I've never seen a company not file an answer. And we're talking back and forth. And then it dawns on me, wait a minute, Reb Yeshai is on the case. That's why there's no answer. It's sitting right on his kever. That's the reason. And Susan is a little bit religious, but she doesn't really understand these things. But she said, this she understood. She said, aha. So that's it. So they never filed an answer on the case. A multi-million-dollar case. And that means we win. Means we cannot lose. The only question is, what is it worth? That's it. So I'm like, whoa. I'm up and jumping up and down. This is like not even believable to me that this could even happen. I never even heard this happen in any other situation. I've been a lawyer for decades and decades and decades. I don't have any friends who've ever had a situation like this. I've never heard of a situation like this. But this is what happened. So we get close, and other strange things happened on this case, besides for this. Many, many strange things happened on this case. I don't know if I can attribute this to Reb Yeshai, some of the other things, but one thing that was really extraordinary is my guy was up on a platform, maybe 30 feet up, and there was no normal ladder to get from the bottom to the top. They would climb a ladder on the side, and then they would like pull themselves up to the top, and then they would hop down like 3 or 4 feet to the next level to where the platform was. Am I being clear? Is that so? I heard that there was a witness up there, way up on the platform, who was a contractor, a steel contractor, who I think saw the whole case and he saw everything that took place. I was always worried about him because in my business, if you have a witness, you don't know what they're going to do, and they show, and the other side gets them at trial, and they just parade them in front of a jury. It's like, whoa, you're in trouble. So I wanted to get to that witness before they did. So I did everything I could to try to find that witness. It took me months and months and months, and I finally tracked this guy down. And where was he? He was in a terrible section of Newark, in the worst section of Newark. Looked like a bombed out zone area. Anyway, I called him first, And I said, my name is such and such, and I would like to get a statement from you of what happened. Did you see anything? He said, oh yes, I saw the whole thing. Oh, I said, that's great. I said, and what happened? He said, oh, your client walked on top of the area above the platform, and he jumped all the way down, and he caused the boards to break. He broke the boards himself. It was all his fault. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. This is awful. That's the worst thing I could possibly hear in the world. He's going to destroy the case. So I said, listen, could I come into you and get a statement? Tomorrow? No. The next day? No. The next day? No. A week? No. 2 weeks. 17 days later, he can talk to me. So I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? For 17 days, I'm thinking of everything I could possibly do with this guy. Besides for having Reb Yishai in the case and doing other segulas, I did with another tzaddik, but let's stick with Reb Yishai because Reb Yishai was on this case. And 17 days later, I go in with him, and I had like 5 different statements for him to sign. One great, one not so great, one a little less, and a little less, and a little less. On all the various facts, based on, I wanted to be prepared for what he may say or what he's willing to say. So I sit down with him, Gerald McKenzie, in his office. Looks like a huge bombed out factory, steel factory. And I said, my name is Sam Rosenberg, and I'm representing such and such. And he said, I know your client. He is such a nice man. Your client is such a nice person. How can I help you? So I pull out the best statement that I have. And I said, please review this and see if you can find this to be accurate and sign it. And the statement says, my client walked up to the top, and there was no ladder, there was no means of him to get there down to the platform, and he merely put his hands down on the side and dangled his legs as far as they would go, and then hopped onto the platform like a foot later. He had his feet that close. And I said, would this be accurate that you could sign this? He said, yes, I'll be happy to sign that. He signs it, and I walk away. From there, to what he said before, it's all his fault. He caused the boards to break. It was like, whoa. So that was another aspect of this case that was not believable. But let's now go to the last part of this case, where the other side, a few weeks before trial, they asked if they could mediate this case.
What does it mean?
A mediation means that a neutral party is there, like a judge, and they try to get the case settled, try to get the parties together. So we're at this mediation, and before I get to this mediation, I had a dream, and the dream said I should apologize to this SOB adjuster, and I should have listened to that, but I didn't. We went through the whole mediation, and they actually offered a fairly good sum of money, and it was enough that my client wanted to take it. He's the one who runs the ship, not me. And he said, I want to take it. I checked, and the amount of the money was $2.225 million. $2.225 million. Crazy number. And we agreed to settle the case. And then, at that point, I apologized to this SOB adjuster. I said, I'm so sorry, you missed your vacation. You were subpoenaed into a settlement conference once. And I said, I wanted to apologize, because I had this thought that I should do that. The guy looks at me, he says, that is so nice of you to apologize. He comes over, he shakes my hand. You're such a nice man, you're such a nice person. His lawyers look at him. They never heard him say anything nice in 30 years, ever. He's such a nasty guy. And he keeps on praising about how nice I am for blah, 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 blah. I'm just sitting there, standing there. He says, see, we paid you, didn't we? We paid you, we agreed to, and we paid you. Are you happy? And I look at him and I said, well, I mean, we settled the case, but truthfully, I'm not happy. You're not happy? Why not? The lawyer's looking at him. What is he asking him? He says, the case is over with. Because we settled it, I said, because we settled it for 2.225. I really wanted to get 2.3. He said, you wanted an extra 75,000? I said, yeah. He said, I will give that to you. His lawyer's looking at him. What is he, crazy? It's not his money to give. He's giving it away. The case is already resolved. He says, yeah, here, well, let's sign. We'll sign this right now. He signs his name. I could show you a copy of the check. It's 2.3. He signs his name.
How many years ago?
And 12. And he signs his name, and case is over with. The case is finished. So Reb Yishai was on the case, on that situation. Now, I have seen many, many things with Reb Yishai that are just unbelievable. I'm telling you direct cases that I experienced, because usually when you hear cases about Reb Yishai, normally you hear this happened with somebody else, and somebody else heard this, and somebody else heard that. They're not direct experiences. They're stories that you hear. But these are actual stories, and I found out that I'm not the only person. There's more things that have happened with Reb Yishai than any other tzaddik I've ever heard of in my life since he's been nifter. There are thousands and thousands of things going on with Reb Yishai all the time. So
When was the first time you went?
the first time I went was in the late 1990s, and there were 12 people there at that point. And also, when I went at that time, something very interesting also took place. When I went there, there was an old man. I was staying in a hotel for Shabbos, for the Sabbath, in the big city in Budapest, and a kosher hotel. And a man was going to tell a story on that Shabbos, and it was like a big thing. Everybody knew that this man was going to tell this story, and so we were all like waiting to hear this story from this old man on Shabbos about, he was going to tell a story about Reb Yishai. And so I was sitting there, and I was there, this was in the late 1990s, and he said, the story that this old man said was that he was in the Holocaust, and he was supposed to get in a line the next day and get on a train, and you know where they went to on a train. And so, so he woke up, before he woke up the next day, what happened is this man who was now telling the story to all of us in Budapest in a hotel, he said to all of us, I have never told this story for 50 years because Reb Yishai told me not to tell this story. But 50 years are now gone by, and I'm going to tell this story. He said, the night before I was to line up during the Holocaust to go on a train, Reb Yishai appeared to me in a dream. Of course, Reb Yishai was nifter already. He was nifter for 100 years, 1925, and now it's in whatever it was, 45, 44, whatever. He was already nifter for almost 20 years. And he came to this man, and this is the story he's telling all of us there. And he's saying, don't worry, you're going to live. You're going to be told to get in a line to get on a train. And while you're in that line, there's going to be a big commotion. And as soon as you see that big commotion, you are to walk away. Don't look back. Just keep on walking and walking and walking. You'll be okay. But I'm telling you, I do not want you to tell this story for 50 years. After 50 years, you can tell the story. Then he disappears. Reb Yishai disappears. This is the story, and the man was crying while he was telling us this story in the hotel. And this is what happened. And then he said, you know, when I was in, I think he lived in Borough Park, I had a shop. I forget, maybe it was a blind shop, I forget what it was, some kind of a shop. And he was this owner and the storekeeper, and he said one day some bad people came into my shop. And they had guns and they pointed at me and they said, we're going to rob you. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. My 50 years are not up. What are these guys doing robbing me? They can't kill me. They can't bother me. I'm supposed to tell this story 50 years from now. He looks at me, you get out of my shop. I'm not giving you anything. They look at him like, and they leave. And this is the story that he tells us. So maybe that's, having that experience and hearing the experience with the Tusher Rebbe gave me even more Amunah when I, had the gall to do the kind of things I've done, to just take his picture, put it down, and do whatever I've done, to believe that this is going to happen, because I could hear and see Rebbe Shai's on the job. He definitely is on the job.
Always through the Tusher.
And so that's what happened with that. Now, what is the last thing that I wanted to tell you? If you have any questions at the end, you can ask. How much time has elapsed here? What time is it? Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Tusher.
What about Tusher?
I was told the Tusher didn't say it. I missed it.
The Tusher Rebbe was just the person who introduced me to Rebbe Shai. That's all. I'd never heard of him before that. He had done a nest with him and gave a picture out that he did the nest with. That's the first time I ever heard of him. Back in the late 90s is the first time I ever heard of him.
How often did you bring the picture on your cases?
All the time.
Since you got it.
When I have something to do, I bring Rebbe Shai along. No question along. No question about it. Rebbe Shai is. But he's known in an extraordinary way for legal cases for some reason. People hear about him all the time for legal cases. There are amazing things that have taken place, and I've heard some amazing stories. I'm not going to tell them because, they didn't happen to me, but I've heard some just incredible stories. But he was a tzaddik, who did way more than legal cases. I mean, he was the highest possible level you could be as a tzaddik, with all kinds of things. Healing people, he could touch people and they would just boom, get better from all kinds of people, walk people who wouldn't talk, who haven't talked, all kinds of things that the Rebbe did. He did all types of things. That he had an open right to Shemayim. He was totally open. I remember one cute little thing I heard that a girl didn't want to get married on a shidduch. And it was a perfect shidduch, and the Rebbe thought it was a great shidduch. So the Rebbe asked for the girl to come in and explain yourself. Why don't you want to go on the shidduch? Your parents are happy, the boy's happy. I know the boy is a great person. I'm telling you, it'll be good. So she was embarrassed to tell the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, I don't feel bad. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. I'm here to listen. I'm here to help. And so she sheepishly said to the Rebbe, he's got 100% red hair. I don't want to have children with red hair. The Rebbe said, don't worry. None of your children will have red hair. She got very excited. I want the shidduch. She had 5 children. Not one, even though he has 100% red hair, not one child had red hair. Not even one hair in his head. That's Rebbe Shai. He is just amazing. And I guess he's just as amazing today as he was then. I never heard of anybody like Rebbe Shai. Right before he passed on, it's well documented that he told his people around him, there's going to be a lot of people coming soon. And you have to have enough rolls, and you have to have enough sugar cubes. Sugar cubes he used and he blessed. and Nisim took place with the sugar cubes. He said, you have to prepare a lot of sugar cubes today because this is the last opportunity you're going to have. And they said, why? And he told them he's going to pass on. So he told them exactly what to do and how to prepare everything before he's passing on. He's preparing that they should have enough food for his funeral. That's what he's telling everybody. Enough food and enough of these sugar cubes so they can continue to do Nisim. I think I said enough. Thank you for listening.
Fascinating.
Taste of shaking?
Thank
You're welcome.
So we're still waiting for a natural healing shear.
Pardon?
A natural healing shear.
That's not this. But we could do that too. With Rabbi Shai, you didn't need natural healing. You just needed him to bless the situation, whatever the item was, and that was it. They were better.
When were you by his caver last?
I think I was there a few years ago. My son just came back. No, I wrote a bunch of stuff up and had to put right on his cover. 2 of my cases.
It's the first time I hear a first-hand story from someone. I think he said this is the first time he heard himself.
Shmuel doesn't budge without a picture of Rabbi Shai. It's in his car, it's all over.
Show me a picture.
We need a copy from God.
Oh, I just have a little one. But if you want the picture that I've used on my Nisim, I'll give you one.
You have a picture with you now?
No.
That picture.
No, but you're welcome to get. I don't mail it because I think it's better. I think it's better just pick it up. But I'll be happy to give it to you.
And the story going around today's Gehet.
You can pick it right up.
Audits. I spoke. Someone told me he knows the account. It did happen. Audits. I help for audits.
It happened with him. You said before, you missed it. He had an audit.
You didn't say the story?
Yeah, that's how I first got involved with Rabbi Shai.
What was the story of the audit?
They wanted to audit me. I put Rabbi Shai's picture and went to the audit, and everything worked out. You listen to the tape.
I just want to give it to me.
Oh, yeah, you can look it up. He'll tell you how to get it.
The lady from the
Go ahead, Rabbi Shmuel. Thank you.
Chicken mutton?
Yeah.